Welcome back to Stories Aloud, where stories shape the soul. Today, we explore Becoming by Michelle Obama, a journey through courage, identity, and hope. From quiet beginnings to the world's biggest stage, this is the story of a woman who never stopped growing, learning, or believing in the power of becoming. And what we're really setting out to do today is, well, get under the surface of that story. We're looking at the insights and the history packed into her memoir, Becoming. The mission here is to really unpack the layers, the identity, the ambition, and the very real sacrifices that shaped Michelle Obama.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to start with the core tension she sets up right away. The book isn't just about the highlights. It often starts with the friction, the difficult parts.
Right, like the White House itself. She paints this picture of majesty, the history, the grandeur.
Exactly, the white columns, the magnolias, but then immediately contrasts it with the reality of living there. Sometimes it felt like a bubble, almost suffocating.
That contrast is so vivid. The huge historical stage versus, well, the everyday stuff. Like knowing their dog Sonny might, have an accident on a rug in maybe the most famous house in the world.
Little moments of normal life in an abnormal setting.
But more than that, it's the tension within her. The public role of First Lady versus Michelle Robinson, the person who sometimes felt trapped, even admitted to, well, hating politics at times.
That's the key, I think. That internal conflict really drives the whole narrative. It's what becoming is all about for her, this constant active process. We're really focusing on how she tried to reconcile these two sort of identities.
The one she built herself through sheer hard work and checking all the boxes.
Right, that relentless personal ambition. And then this other identity, the one that was kind of thrust upon her by public life. She's always trying to make those two things work together.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning then. Let's dig into those Chicago roots where that drive, that sense of self first started taking shape. Becoming me, as she calls that section.
Absolutely. Her identity was definitely forged in South Shore. And the place itself matters. They rented the top floor of this tidy brick bungalow from her great-aunt Robbie.
Robbie, the piano teacher.
The very strict, very formidable piano teacher, yeah. The whole environment wasn't fancy, but it was steeped in discipline.
She writes about growing up, hearing the sound of striving, which is such a great phrase. Not even her own striving at first, but Robbie's students downstairs.
That's it, the plink, 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 Scales played slowly, imperfectly, on this old upright piano right below their apartment floor. Robbie demanded absolute rigor. She wasn't shy about telling kids off if they hadn't practiced.
So that atmosphere, the idea that effort leads to results, it was just there, in the air.
Totally. She absorbed it. You couldn't escape the sound of effort and, well, gradual improvement.
But that whole experience, learning on an imperfect instrument, leads to this really interesting moment later on, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's fascinating. Years later, she sits down at this beautiful, perfectly tuned 88-key grand piano, like the symbol of institutional excellence.
And she freezes.
Completely freezes. Because the challenge wasn't the music itself, it was the perfection of the instrument. Her whole childhood was about making music work on Robbie's old piano, the one with the chipped middle C she used as a guidepost.
Wow. So she was trained to succeed despite limitations, but perfect conditions actually felt alien. That's quite revealing.
It says so much. She learned resilience by navigating imperfection. When faced with flawlessness, she felt kind of lost. It connects right back to her drive. It was always tied to overcoming something.
You can see how that might play out later, like in the White House.
For sure.
Yeah.
The White House is designed for perfection, right? But maybe it was the imperfect moments, the dog, fighting for the girl's normal activities that felt more manageable, more real to her, because her childhood prepared her for the struggle, not the smooth ride.
Okay, so beyond Robbie, let's talk about her immediate family. Her dad, Fraser Robinson Sr., and her mom, Marion. They were the real anchors.
Absolutely. Fraser was like the intellectual and emotional core. He worked for the city water plant, boiler technician, but he had this deep love for jazz and art. He'd studied art himself.
He sounds like a really interesting guy. Appreciated strong people, pushed Craig, her brother, in basketball.
Yeah, the story about propping coins over the doorframe for Craig to jump for, classic example. He valued excellence, both physical and intellectual. He didn't just punch a clock, he wanted them to aim high.
And Marion, her mom, provided that quiet strength, self-awareness.
Exactly, and that translated directly into Michelle's early education advantage. Marion taught her to read before kindergarten. That was a huge first step.
And the family closeness, you mentioned, that was key too. Symbolized by the car, right?
Oh, the Buick. The Electra 225. Fraser called it the deuce and a quarter. Huge bronze, two-door thing. He kept it immaculate.
It wasn't just getting from A to B, was it?
Not at all. It was like their mobile living room. They'd take these aimless drives in the evening, just talking, or trips to the drive-in movies, eating fried chicken and chips merry and packed. It represents that commitment to, quality time, real conversation, taking pride in what you have.
That foundation clearly fueled her drive, which we see really early on, like in kindergarten. Bryn Mawr Elementary, 1969.
Yeah, she's already ahead because of her mom, but then comes the color card incident.
Ah, the famous story. Tell us about that.
It's such a defining moment. It was this public sorting exercise. Read the color word quickly, get a gold star. Michelle nails most of them, but then the card for white comes up. She freezes, fails.
And she felt that acutely, didn't she? The humiliation.
Oh, yeah. Felt it physically. Being told to sit down, instantly labeled incapable,
Yeah.
while other kids are getting their stars.
But she didn't just accept it.
Not a chance. The next morning, she's still furious about the injustice. She marches up to the teacher, Mrs. Burrows, and demands a do-over.
Wow. As a kindergartner.
Yeah. Teacher tries to brush her off, but Michelle insists. She slows down, focuses, practically yells, "White!" and claims her star. It wasn't about the word, it was about refusing to be put in that box. Her first real act of self-advocacy.
And that kind of advocacy gets mirrored by her mother just a couple of years later in second grade.
Right. She lands in this awful basement classroom, bad lighting, mayhem, kids throwing erasers, and an incompetent teacher.
Sounds grim.
It was. And Marion Robinson saw the actual distress in her daughter. It wasn't just complaining. So Marion starts this quiet, weeks-long process of behind-the-scenes lobbying
Tater moved.
to get Michelle and a few other kids moved upstairs to a better class. And this wasn't just like a mom being protective. It taught Michelle a huge lesson that kids know when they're being devalued. She realized the chaos wasn't because the kids were bad. It was their angry reaction to a system that wasn't teaching them, wasn't investing in them. Marion even told the teacher later, "You have no business teaching."
That's blunt, but necessary, it sounds like.
Absolutely saved her academically, showed her how much environment and resources matter.
And all this parental support happened within a specific kind of family communication style, right? Treating kids like adults.
Totally. They'd indulge questions for hours, which is, amazing for developing critical thinking. They didn't have rigid rules, more like guidelines built on trust, like no set curfew. Instead, they'd ask, "What time do you think is reasonable?" and trust her answer.
That takes a lot of confidence in your kids. And led to the famous peanut butter and jelly story.
Ah, the Socratic victory. Yes. The endless debate. Why eggs for breakfast? They didn't dismiss it. They engaged with her argument about protein. And Michelle, using logic, successfully argued that peanut butter and jelly was just as good and way easier.
And her mom conceded.
Yep. Because they took her argument seriously. So PB&J for breakfast for the next 9 years, she learned that making a good case, owning your argument, actually works.
But alongside all this striving and family support, there are these deeper identity issues, weren't there? Tied to race, the Great Migration.
Definitely. Which brings us to her grandfather, Fraser Robinson Sr., Dandy, a really complex figure. Cigar smoker, easily annoyed, yelled at the news.
He came north during the Great Migration from South Carolina.
Yeah, grandson of slaves from the Low Country, worked 30 years as a postal worker. But that background bred a certain mistrust. Sometimes it came out harshly, like calling young black men hanging around boo-boos.
A kind of survival mechanism, maybe, stemming from past experiences.
Probably. Rooted in the trauma of constantly navigating oppression, that feeling of never quite knowing what other folks saw you to be. But even as a kid, Michelle would challenge him, like telling him, "Don't be mean to grandma," setting boundaries.
And this conflict extended to how they spoke. The idea of speaking the white way.
Yeah, that was a real tension. For some people in the community, speaking with, let's say, academic precision could be seen as a betrayal, as being uppity.
But her parents insisted on it.
They insisted on proper grammar, clear articulation. It wasn't just about sounding educated. It was about survival. It was about needing to own our smartness, as she puts it, inhabit it with pride. They knew that in predominantly white institutions, how you spoke was often the first line of defense against prejudice.
That makes sense. That kind of psychological armor would be crucial moving forward, especially transitioning to high school, to Whitney Young. That was a big shift.
Huge. Suddenly she's in this big, competitive, integrated school, not just Craig's little sister anymore, but just Michelle Robinson. And more than that, she starts seeing the The hidden advantages some kids had.
The apparatus of privilege and connection, she calls it. The half-hidden ladders.
Exactly. She realized some kids had access to things her family just didn't. It was a real lesson in how privilege works, even when it's subtle.
And how did her parents counter that?
Boys.
With sacrifice, right. The Paris trip story.
Oh, that's such a powerful example. This optional class trip to Paris. Expensive. Michelle doesn't even mention it at home, assuming they can't afford it. They lived carefully, didn't own their home.
What they've been saving.
In secret. And her dad was almost insulted she didn't ask. He said something like, "That's actually not for you to decide, Michelle. We are your investment."
Wow. We are your investment. That's a heavy thing to carry.
Immense. It meant she couldn't really ask for much more, ever, but it also fueled her like crazy. She knew she was carrying their hopes, their sacrifices. That became the driving force, especially at Princeton.
Which she entered in 1981. And that's where the preparation gap really hit her.
Undeniably. She and other minority students quickly realized they were behind. No SAT prep. High school classes maybe weren't quite college level compared to their peers from elite private schools. She felt like she'd shown up to the race already laps behind.
Like bringing a broken instrument to a recital was the metaphor she used?
Exactly. And that feeling of being other made them band together, find support in each other. But the prejudice wasn't just academic, was it? The roommate story.
Yeah, that's just awful.
Yeah.
The roommate's mother being horrified that her daughter was living with a black student.
And badgering the university until the daughter moved out. It's chilling.
Yeah.
Even if Michelle didn't know the full story then, you can imagine the atmosphere.
So how did she respond to that environment?
By doubling down. The "I'll show you" drive kicked into high gear. She felt she had to overperform, be better, faster, smarter, just to push past it all. Every A wasn't just for her. It felt like it was proving something for her entire race.
And all this pressure, this striving was happening while her father's health was declining. His MSc.
Yeah, and Fraser's response was just total defiance. He refused to seem vulnerable. When she'd call home from Princeton and ask how he was, the answer was always, always, "I feel good."
Protecting her.
Absolutely. Maintaining his dignity, his strength for her, even over the phone. His refusal to give in became this quiet source of inspiration, maybe even fuel for her own determination.
That determination took her through Harvard Law, then into corporate law at Sidley and Austin. She'd done it. Checked all the boxes.
She was the perfect product, right. Ivy League degrees, could code switch between Southside slang and boardroom jargon, mastered being a lawyer. 47th floor, big firm. Peak achievement by those standards.
And then Barack Obama shows up. Late. On his first day as a summer associate.
Which immediately rubbed her the wrong way. Tardiness to her was hubris. Exactly what she'd been trained to avoid.
But he wasn't quite what she expected.
Not at all. He wasn't just careless. His path was completely different. This improvisational zigzag, she calls it. Hawaii, Indonesia, philosophy, writing bad poetry, then community organizing in Chicago for like 12 grand a year.
So different from her linear path.
Totally. And he had this calm, this centeredness, this lack of doubt that she found both intriguing and kind of annoying at first.
And she was supposed to be his advisor, right? Tried to keep it professional.
Yep. Flat out told him, "I don't date." But he was persistent. That deadly combination of smooth and reasonable, he just logically argued why they should go out, dismissing the advisor thing.
What finally changed her mind? Wait, was it just persistence?
Persistence helped, but I think it was more about realizing how different his perspective was, especially compared to the other ambitious lawyers around her. And then there was the Les Miserables date.
Ah, yes.
The musical.
Right. Michelle, the ultimate box checker, is suffering through this 3-hour musical she doesn't even like, purely because she feels obligated. Worried about appearances, what people would think if they left early.
Classic overachiever guilt.
Totally. Sunk costs, right?
Yeah.
But Barack just leans over, sees she's miserable, and says, "What if we got out of here? We could just leave."
Just like that. No worrying about optics.
Nope. And that blew her mind. It showed her he wasn't bound by convention, wasn't worried about appearances in the same way. He wasn't going to endure misery just because it was expected. That must have been incredibly freeing to witness.
It really shifted her perspective on him. She started seeing him as this kind of unicorn. Secure, not obsessed with money or status, valued books like they were sacred. His ambition was different.
And that difference became even clearer when she saw his work as a community organizer in Roseland.
Yes. That was pivotal. She saw him trying to get a whole community unstuck, not just himself. He wasn't posturing, wasn't trying to sound more black or anything. He was just connecting people, pointing them toward a shared goal.
And he had that question that resonated with her.
That core question he'd picked up from his reading. Do we settle for the world as it is, or do we work for the world as it should be?
That must have hit home. Her whole life had been about getting herself unstuck.
Exactly. Suddenly, here was this idea of applying that same drive, that same energy to something bigger, something collective. It offered a purpose beyond just personal achievement,
A different kind of ambition.
a completely different framework. But just as she's processing this, tragedy strikes. Her close friend from college, Suzanne,
Losing Suzanne to cancer at only 26, that sounds devastating.
it absolutely shattered her worldview. Suzanne's death was a sabotage of my ideals, she writes. Michelle believes so strongly that hard work could solve anything, but you can't work your way out of cancer.
It exposed the limits of her box-checking philosophy.
Totally. She felt helpless, walled off from the truth. She'd been working obsessively while Suzanne was declining. By the time she flew out to see her, Suzanne was already in a coma.
Just the cold, hard fact.
Hard-
She's gone, and I'm still here.
Yeah. And that grief, that confrontation with randomness and loss, threw her into a major career crisis. She's deeply in love with Barack, inspired by his purpose, but also scared.
Scared away.
Scared that his huge ambition, this barreling wave, would just swallow her own desires. She knew corporate law wasn't fulfilling anymore, but she didn't know what was.
And she turned to her mom for advice.
Yeah, poured her heart out about feeling unfulfilled. And Marion's response was pure, pragmatic Marion Robinson.
What did she say?
She kind of chuckled and said, essentially, make the money first, worry about happiness later. Pay off those student loans, get secure, then figure out fulfillment. Classic Southside realism.
But that wasn't the only influence pushing her, was it? Her father's final days.
Right. That image is so powerful. Her father, Fraser, deep in the grip of MS grip. The family tries to get him to rest, stop working. But he saw resting as giving in.
And she finds him struggling to get dressed for work.
Struggling painfully to put on his city worker uniform, his boots. Determined to go tend those boilers one last time. It was this final act of defiance against his illness, his helplessness. He died shortly after.
That memory, combined with Barack's encouragement, that must have been the catalyst.
It seems like it. Barack told her the unknown wasn't going to kill me. He'd worked unfulfilling jobs himself just to pay bills. He gave her the permission, maybe, that she couldn't quite give herself.
To leave the safety net of corporate law.
To make the leap. To start the process of really unbecoming the lawyer she thought she had to be. And that leap eventually led her to Valerie Jarrett.
And the job at City Hall. Her first taste of public service.
Yeah, dealing with real people, real problems. Fallen trees, traffic jams, breaking up fights at senior picnics. It forced her out of the intellectual stratosphere and into the messy reality of city life. She learned you could be both incredibly capable and incredibly human.
A lesson she definitely carried forward. But just as she finds this new professional path, the desire for family complicates things again. The struggle with fertility.
That was another incredibly hard period. Years of trying, a devastating miscarriage. It was another harsh lesson that some things just aren't within your control no matter how hard you try or how much you want them. IVF became the path forward.
Which worked, thankfully. But she writes about how that process highlighted a certain inequity, even in their very modern equal partnership.
Yeah, this is a really honest part of the book. Biology stepped in. She was the one doing the daily injections, the monitoring, dealing with the physical side effects, the emotional roller coaster.
While Barack, through no fault of his own, really, just couldn't carry that specific burden.
Right. He was supportive, but his life continued largely as normal with his legislative work. She felt that flicker of resentment. It challenged her core belief in total equality of effort within their marriage. She realized the sacrifices, especially putting career dreams on hold for a bit, were inevitably going to be more mine than his.
The burden of being female, she called it.
Exactly, but she was clear. I wanted it so much. The desire for children, for Malia and then Sasha, was powerful enough to make her accept that unequal burden, at least for a time. Motherhood became the priority.
And that focus on family, on their daughters, became central. But then politics came calling again, louder than ever, the presidential run.
And she was not keen initially, deeply reluctant. Her own career in the nonprofit world was finally taking off again. She was finding her footing.
She was worried the campaign would derail everything.
Worried it would really bang us up, as she put it, destroy their family life, hijack her ambitions again. She really wanted him to wait, maybe until 2016, when the girls would be teenagers.
But he felt the time was now. And the campaign, when it started, was brutal. especially the attacks on her.
Oh, incredibly swift and vicious, and often deeply personal, racialized, gendered. The terrorist fist jab for a simple, playful bump, being called Obama's baby mama on Fox News.
That's dehumanizing.
Completely. She felt like she was being turned into this caricature. Too tall, too forceful, ready to emasculate Godzilla of a political wife. It was bewildering and painful. She'd spent her life trying not to be intimidating, trying to fit in, and now she was being portrayed as this monster.
How did she cope with that?
It was tough. She realized the attacks weren't really about her, but they still worked. Barack was supportive, told her she could step back anytime, but ultimately she found her footing by leaning into her own story.
Especially in places like Iowa, right?
Exactly. She went there without a script, just started talking honestly about her life, her family, her values, and she found that people connected with it. People who reminded her of her own family back in Chicago, regular folks worried about the same things.
So telling her story became her defense.
It became her strength. She realized she and Barack were a team, and they owed people their authentic selves. The grassroots energy, especially after winning Iowa, gave her a sense of hope, maybe even made her rethink some of her own cynicism about politics.
Which leads us to the White House, the transition, and the unbelievable pressure of being the first African-American First Lady.
Yeah, the weight of that was immense. She knew instinctively she was other. The campaign had taught her she had to be better, faster, smarter, and stronger. Grace wasn't a given, it had to be earned. She felt constantly measured against stereotypes.
Walking onto that stage knowing the scrutiny was different, harsher.
Absolutely, which is partly why they were so meticulous about ethics and trying to maintain some normalcy.
Like Barack insisting on paying for their own moving expenses and redecorating.
Right. Turning down the $100,000 federal allowance, using his book money instead. They knew any misstep, however small, would be blown way out of proportion.
And the ultimate symbol of normalcy, or trying for it, was her mom, Marion Robinson, moving in.
Oh, Marion was the secret weapon against the bubble. Refusing Secret Service for trips to CVS or Filene's basement, doing her own laundry, she just wouldn't be consumed by the White House atmosphere. When people recognized her, she'd just shrug. Yeah, I get that a lot.
She kept it real.
She was the anchor to reality. And ironically, family life became more stable in some ways because Barack was physically there. He made it a point to be upstairs for dinner at 6:30 sharp every night, even if he had to go back to work afterwards.
But even normal life had weird White House twists, like getting billed for everything.
Yeah, they got an itemized bill each month. Food, toiletries, everything used in the private residence. They paid their own way within that public space.
So as First Lady, her first big task was figuring out what her role would actually be. She wanted something tangible, right? Measurable results.
Definitely. She pivoted away from the abstract stuff she disliked, focused on concrete issues, supporting military families, tackling childhood obesity. The military spouse initiative came directly from women she met, campaigning women struggling with licenses, childcare, careers disrupted by deployments.
Making their sacrifices visible.
And trying to ease the burden. And then, of course, the garden.
The White House kitchen garden. That became iconic.
And it started from a very personal place. Worrying about her own daughters eating too much takeout during the campaign craziness, she hired Sam Cass, a young chef, and the garden grew from there.
A way to literally put down roots in the role.
Exactly. It became an outdoor classroom, the physical symbol of her Let's Move initiative. And it was brilliant because it felt elemental, mostly apolitical.
Safe ground.
Pretty much. Who's going to argue against vegetables? It gave her a platform to talk about health and nutrition, something with broad appeal, without getting bogged down in the political fights she found so draining.
But that constant worry about optics, about how things look, never really went away, did it? Even trying to have a normal date night.
Oh, the New York date night fiasco. They go out for dinner in a Broadway show, just trying to reconnect. And before they're even home, critics are slamming it as extravagant, a waste of taxpayer money for security.
That must have been infuriating.
It confirmed her fear. Optics would always rule our lives. Any attempt at spontaneity, any fun, required this massive logistical effort and was instantly turned into political fodder. The bubble was real and heavy.
Which is why she fought so hard against it for Malia and Sasha.
Fiercely. She was really upset when she realized they couldn't just go to the mall or hang out with friends like normal kids without a huge production.
It wasn't just about convenience, was it? It was about their development.
Absolutely. She basically told the Secret Service, if you're going to protect a kid, you've got to be able to move like a kid. She insisted they revise protocols so the girls could have sleepovers, go to birthday parties, grab ice cream, retain some semblance of a normal childhood.
Mm.
She and Barack might have lost their spontaneity, but she was determined her daughters wouldn't.
It's interesting how, despite hating the scrutiny, she learned to use the public gaze strategically, like with fashion.
Yeah, that was smart. She realized if everyone was going to dissect her outfits anyway, she might as well make it work for her. Use it as a platform. Maybe if they looked at her dress, they'd also notice the military spouse beside her or read the message about healthy eating.
And she deliberately chose certain designers, didn't she? Mixed high-end with affordable stuff.
Right. She championed diverse, up-and-coming designers like Jason Wu and Narciso Rodriguez alongside pieces from Target or J. Crew. It annoyed some traditionalists like Oscar de la Renta, but it was a conscious choice to boost a wider range of American talent. And she insisted on paying for almost all of it herself.
Using visibility for impact. That extended beyond fashion, too, like her mentorship program.
Oh, the mentoring program for DC high school girls was huge, even if it wasn't always public. They specifically sought out girls who were often overlooked from immigrant families, teen moms, girls who'd been in shelters, smart kids who just weren't on the usual radar.
And they kept it private.
Mostly. To keep it real, avoid spectacle. The goal was simple. Fight that feeling of invisibility. Tell these girls you matter. It was her way of being the opposite of that guidance counselor who doubted her ability to get into Princeton. She wanted to hold the door open.
That sense of responsibility, holding the door open, also meant carrying some heavy emotional burdens, didn't it? The nation's grief.
Definitely. The aftermath of the Sandy Hook shooting in Newtown was incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
20 little kids murdered. She said it was one of the hardest times for Barack, and she actually felt she couldn't go with him to the vigil. She was too overwhelmed, felt she had no strength available to lend, just pure devastation.
That vulnerability is striking. But it didn't mean stepping back entirely.
No. Shortly after, she made a very deliberate choice to attend the funeral of Hadia Pendleton in Chicago.
The young girl shot in a park, mistaken identity.
Exactly. A bright, promising girl, just like Michelle had been. Hadia could have been me, she said. Attending that funeral was a strategic move.
How so?
While the nation was understandably focused on the horror of Newtown, Michelle used her presence to redirect some of that attention to the chronic daily gun violence devastating inner cities like her hometown. It was a plea for action, for people to see that tragedy too. She later invited Hadia's parents to sit with her at the State of the Union.
Using your platform to shift the focus, to make the unseen seen. That seems like a theme.
It really is. And it played out culturally, too, bringing diverse artists to the White House, John Legend, Smokey Robinson, making it clear that American culture wasn't just one thing.
And the ultimate example of that was probably the Hamilton performance.
Oh, yeah. That moment captured everything. Lin-Manuel Miranda and his incredibly talented, multiracial cast performing songs about the Founding Fathers.
Right there in the White House, under the portraits of George and Martha Washington.
The symbolism was overwhelming. This diverse group telling America's origin story, reflecting a history that allowed the diversity in. It visually dismantled the old idea that history only belongs to people who look a certain way.
She felt that moment deeply, didn't she?
Yeah.
About hidden stories finally being told differently.
Yes. She said, so many of us go through life with our stories hidden until someone dares to start telling that story differently. Being First Lady for her became about helping others tell their stories, gain that visibility. It connects right back to those early struggles over how to speak, how to fit in, how to own your identity.
When you pull it all together, this exploration of becoming, what's the main takeaway? What's the recurring lesson?
I think it really comes down to resilience. Resilience in the face of the basic, unavoidable truth that life often isn't fair. Whether it's Suzanne's death, the IVF struggles, the political attacks, Newtown, the world constantly throws unfairness at you.
And her journey was about finding ways to keep moving forward despite that.
Exactly. Her first instinct was always to strive harder, work harder. But the White House years taught her that sometimes you can't just outwork the unfairness. Sometimes you have to endure it, survive it, and find meaning within it.
Which meant redefining success, didn't it? Moving beyond just checking the boxes.
That's the huge shift. She had to define success and happiness for herself, not by external validation. She even realized that the big public moments, the speeches, the applause, the photos, those felt like the small moments in retrospect. They were performances.
So if those are the small moments, what were the big ones?
The big ones, the ones she truly cherished, were the quiet ones, the unrehearsed, unphotographed in-between moments. Watching Sasha play in the ocean, getting an agent to push her daughter on a swing, those moments of simple, unjudged human connection, that's where she found the real meaning. A tiny latch spring open on your heart, as she beautifully put it.
That's a profound evolution, from striving for applause to valuing that quiet, internal humanity.
It's the journey from Michelle Robinson, the focused achiever, to Michelle Obama, the person grappling with the complexities of a huge life, finding peace not in conquering the world, but in being truly present within it.
So the final thought for listeners, drawing from all this, she asked herself, could I have everything? What's the question for us?
Yeah, her journey makes you reflect, doesn't it? For you listening, maybe the question is, what really defines enough for you? Are you chasing the applause, the external markers? Or are you making space for those quiet, unrehearsed moments? And thinking back to Barack's question, how much are you working for the world as it should be versus just accepting it as it is?
This Journey into Becoming by Michelle Obama reminds us that we are never finished. We are always becoming. If Michelle Obama's story inspired you, share this video and subscribe to Stories Aloud for more journeys that move the heart and awaken the purpose within. Until next time, keep listening.